think with that, we can go ahead and jump in. My name is Pete Breton. I lead product strategy here at NinjaOne. I've been here for about 6 years and really seen how Ninja and the endpoint management and IT ops market have shifted over the last 6 years. I spend most of my time working closely with IT leaders like you, whether they be customers, whether they be prospects, as well as like analysts and market thought leaders to really understand the challenges that are being faced by IT leaders, how they're trying to solve them, and really help them get the most out of their NinjaOne investment. And I'm joined by Matt Hastings.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Hastings. I'm our SVP of Product Management here at Ninja. Pete has me beat on tenure and on intro for sure. So I've been here for about 2.5 years. And my background really is in enterprise IT and enterprise IT security and helping organizations learn what they need to help go out and build the products that they ultimately use. So Pete and I actually work together quite closely on a daily or weekly basis. So excited to be talking with you all today. And one last personal tidbit, I work out of my house, as you can probably tell, here in Virginia, which is incredibly cold. So looking at folks who are coming in from places like Puerto Rico and Barbados, I am very jealous. So shout out to you. It has not been above freezing here in several weeks.
I guess I can't say anything up in Boston. I've got 2 feet of snow outside. Awesome. Let's jump in. We've got a quick agenda. I won't spend long here, but I do want to give you a quick overview of today's webinar. For those of you who have not run into NinjaOne in the market so far or are not current customers, we do want to give you a brief intro to who we are and why we're here. Matt will then jump in and really walk you through the Magic Quadrant, what it means, how to read it, how to use that as a tool to evaluate endpoint management solutions. I'll walk you through the critical capabilities and introduce you to that concept and how to use it in your evaluations. And then we want to wrap up at the end to talk about why this matters and why you should care. The hope is to give you a tool that you can use to go and evaluate endpoint management in your environments, and then ultimately talk about what you can expect if you implement a modern endpoint management strategy. So, with that, who is NinjaOne? Before I kind of intro NinjaOne, I think it's important to talk about the market and what's going on in the market and really why we exist, why we have been successful as a company. So Ninja really believes that endpoint management has changed. IT teams are managing more devices, more operating systems, and facing more security risk than ever before without more time or more staff. If you dig into the data about what we're seeing in the IT market, we're seeing fewer and fewer people who are going into the field of, for example, and becoming sysadmins or working in IT ops or working in end user compute. And that's really causing a challenge because the asks, the needs of IT ops are not diminishing, they're increasing, and there are fewer people to do it. And so what we're seeing is we need IT teams to be more efficient and deliver more and deliver better without having more resources. And so they really need to rely on the tools and platforms they have in place to make that impact. And when you look at what the market was like 5, 6 years ago, it was dominated by legacy tools that were built for a different era. Static environments, siloed teams, deeply heterogeneous environments that had slow appetites for change. And so ultimately, modern IT needs something fundamentally different. NinjaOne was built specifically to solve for this modern reality. From day one, our focus has been on simplicity, automation, and scale, not bolting features onto legacy platforms, but rethinking how endpoint management should work in a cloud-first distributed environment. We started in the MSP space and they have faced this reality for, well over a decade, deeply heterogeneous environments, different needs and requirements for their clients, deep technical knowledge, and the ability to leverage a platform to its full capability, and therefore really high expectations of the platforms we use. And growing up in that environment and then expanding into the enterprise space has allowed us to take this much more modern approach that brings simplicity to a deeply complex world. And that focus has driven our growth. We believe we are the fastest growing endpoint management platform in the market. We're trusted by over 35,000 customers globally, from lean IT teams to large complex enterprises. And that growth isn't accidental. It's the result of consistent execution, a deeply customer-led motion, both from a product perspective, but also from, a support and enablement perspective, and then ultimately delivering real operational value. We focus day to day on how we can help you do better in IT. Ultimately, we want to say that we're the new standard for endpoint management and IT operations. But when we say that, what do we mean? We mean faster time to value, automation that gets used, a truly unified platform that works across every device, every workflow, every form factor, and a product that your teams enjoy working using every day. We hear all the time, before I moved to Ninja, I dreaded using my endpoint management tool, and we want to solve that. We want to beat IT misery with you. Ultimately, endpoint management shouldn't slow IT down. It should be the system that makes everything else work better. And that's why endpoint management can no longer exist in isolation. What started with endpoints naturally extends into something bigger, a unified approach to IT operations. And that's the NinjaOne platform. NinjaOne is the unified IT operations platform that empowers organizations to manage every device, protect every endpoint, and support every employee from a turnkey multi-tenant cloud-native console. We eliminate tool sprawl by unifying management across all operating systems and form factors and intelligently automating workflows across IT ops, ultimately resulting in reduced costs, reduced complexity, and much more satisfied and productive employees, not just on the IT side, but on the end user and employee side as well. Built on this unified platform is a complete suite of solutions, including endpoint management or RMM, autonomous patching, remote access, unified backup, and service desk, all working together out of the box with no legacy infrastructure to modernize IT, simplify work, and deliver a better technology experience for every employee. Now that I've given you a quick overview of NinjaOne, I'll hand it off to Matt to share the results of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for endpoint management.
All right. So here on the screen, you can see kind of the visual representation that is the results of the MQ. If you've been on LinkedIn or you see many things around on the internet, like this is generally what a lot of people publish as the high level visual of how to interpret or see the results of the Gartner MQ. You see that the participants are broken into four different categories. We're particularly proud of Ninja's placement here. So we're in the top right, which is a leaders quadrant. Most importantly here is like it's our first time ever actually being a part of the MQ. And so as for us to be a leader in the first time that we're participating is something we're particularly proud of. But ultimately, where you place here is not necessarily the whole point of this conversation. Gartner themselves publishes these MQs to help buyers objectively evaluate vendors. The Magic Quadrant gives buyers a high level view of kind of two axes. On the y-axis, you can look at vendor execution. On the x-axis, you can look at vision and kind of how they scored. And that's how you get the placement on the chart itself. Each participating vendor was evaluated against 14 critical capabilities that comprise this endpoint management MQ. And hold that number 14 in your head because we're going to go through each of those and kind of look at how Ninja did per critical capability later in a slide with Pete. We believe Gartner's placement for Ninja reflects how well we simplify endpoint management through things like automation, visibility, secure operations. And this evaluation leans heavily on things like customer feedback and technical analysis so that ultimately we feel validates the outcomes our customers experience every day. Um, at a macro level, kind of stepping back a bit, we believe this is a representation of kind of a macro trend or a changing of the guard moment in endpoint management. For years, this market's been dominated by legacy tools built for a really different reality. Things like on-premise, slower moving, heavily siloed tools that are just not necessarily built for today's modern endpoint management environment where we have heterogeneous devices, heterogeneous services that need to be worked on, and ultimately people, working across geographies. And what we're seeing now really thinks what we see now is really what we believe Gartner's recognition of this. And it's a shift towards a modern endpoint management approach and a platform need that prioritizes things like speed, automation, visibility, and operational simplicity. So the MQ isn't just about individual vendors, it's a recognition of the market itself and how the market is moving towards a more modern approach. So if we go into the next slide, we can start looking and drilling down into a specific area where we score particularly well and we wanted to hone in on, which is our ability to execute. On that graphic that was tracked on the y-axis was what I mentioned. And this is where we perform some well and something that we think really represents some of our core values here on the product and engineering side. So when we talk about like the ability to execute, this is really about turning that vision into shipped operational value. And that's where we tend to stand out. I actually used to work with someone who would commonly say execution trumps strategy. And I think like a lot of phrases, like there's some truth to that where like execution is really important and can trump strategy in certain places, but you do have to be moving generally in the right direction. And this is something that we do pretty well. First, this starts with a modern cloud native architecture that Ninja is built on top of, and we're going to go into that in a little bit more in another slide, allowing us to ship features faster, simplify operations, and roll out updates continuously without customer-side upgrades or infrastructure management. Ultimately, this cuts down on the amount of work our customers have to do to maintain and use the solution. Second, we operate on a rapid innovation cycle. Our roadmap velocity is directly driven by customer feedback. As an anecdote, we processed over 24,000 pieces of customer feedback submitted to us on our public roadmap in 2025. And we focus on delivering integrated capabilities where the feature itself is not built in isolation, but it's incorporated into the broader platform so that you get extended benefits by leveraging more features within Ninja. And finally, we just commit to what we deliver. Our roadmap commitments are backed by this proven delivery history, tight alignments between teams like myself, the engineering team, Pete's team, and consistent execution. And this is what builds, the long-term trust that we've built, established, and really cherished with our customers.
So, to add on top of this, why is ability to execute so important? I was actually talking to Rahul Hirani, our CPO, just yesterday about this, and we were walking through new products that we're building. And one of the things that he said was, there are a lot of companies that build a lot of things that turn into nothing, right? And when we look at our ability to bring new products, new capabilities, new features to market, very few are tests. They are customer driven, they are promised, and they are executed on in a way that delivers value to the customer. And I think when you look at where we sit in our ability to execute, it reflects our ability to constantly be bringing new capabilities to market. And so while we may be a slightly younger, newer vendor in the market compared to some legacy vendors that are there, I think our ability to execute really highlights the fact that we are delivering very, very rapidly to bring new capabilities to you all as quickly as we can and in a way that like is immediately useful and adds value to our customers.
So now focusing just kind of on Ninja itself, and what we see and what we really talk about is four key differences that ultimately help us stand out in that ability to execute. I mentioned this a little bit in the last slide, but it starts with the infrastructure that we're built upon and having a fully managed multi-tenant, turnkey SaaS platform. I cannot overstate enough how helpful and beneficial that is when we look at things about how to roll out features quickly, how to scale efficiently. The platform is what enables all of that. Kind of moving up the stack into what the features and core services we provide is a unified management layer. And so what that means is not taking a look at siloed device types or siloed use cases, but unifying that across all the different devices that you could have. Could be at workstations, servers, Windows, Linux, Mac devices, Android, iOS, think about MDM. All of these things delivered or managed through a lightweight agent or an MDM profile and viewable and controllable within a single platform, is a huge benefit to our customers. After that, now it's about how do I take what I need to do and automate it? How do I build repeatable processes so that my technicians don't need to spend their days responding to the same type of tickets or same type of work that they've done in the past? And so using, simple automation that can allow for self-healing through policy or through configuration is a huge benefit and something that we're always kind of building on top of. And all of this is to help using AI drive better decisions and making technicians more efficient. And then finally, ease of use. So ease of use is something that we spend a ton of time working through on designs and workflows and engaging with subject matter experts to make sure that we're solving the complex problems that are, heterogeneous IT management into like a very simple workflow that you can learn in days, deploy in weeks. It's very intuitive and fast, and it ultimately is driving that technician efficiency. As an anecdote, I literally came from a design review for the last hour walking into this webinar where we spent an hour just looking at how to configure a specific new functionality that's coming into the product and what was the most optimal way for ease of use of that configuration. A good customer example here is, one of the ones our customers sees the ability for NinjaOne to both stand out, differentiate, and execute is TF Bank. They scaled across 14 European markets. They needed a platform that could be deployed quickly, operate reliably, and keep up without adding additional headcount on their side. They chose NinjaOne, and NinjaOne was rolled out to all their devices in under a week. They replaced multiple tools, improve their patching speed, ultimately reducing risk and reducing their IT costs by 80%, allowing them to focus on more higher value work items instead of managing their infrastructure. All right. And I think in the next section, Pete's going to talk about, how to actually interpret and use the MQ.
Thanks so much, Matt. So what you have, I'm going to orient you to the slide here. These are the 14 critical capabilities that Gartner has identified as the critical capabilities for endpoint management. I'll try to say critical capabilities only like 50 more times. So up until this point, we've talked about the MQ, which is, again, that high level overview. Where do you stand against a standardized set of capabilities and the weights that Gartner has applied to them? But it doesn't tell the whole story. The critical capabilities report is designed to answer a much more practical question. How do these platforms, all of the endpoint management platforms that are on that Magic Quadrant, actually perform in real operational scenarios? Critical capabilities help you do three important things. First, they allow you to compare vendors across real world use cases, things like endpoint operations, automation, patching, and day-to-day IT workflows. This isn't about vision or momentum, it's about execution. Second, they help you understand the strengths that don't always show up in the Magic Quadrant in impactful ways. So, two vendors might sit very close together on the MQ, but perform very differently depending on the capabilities that matter most to you. And third, and this is most important, they let you weight capabilities based on what matters most in your environment. So, again, the MQ has standardized weights that are applied to each of these that may not be how you weight the importance of these individual capabilities. And so, you can see here on the left, we have our highest rated capabilities, automation and workflow orchestration at 4.5. And on the bottom right, we have our lowest, Chrome OS management and patching at 1.3. So each vendor will receive ratings across each of these capabilities, and these ratings are multiplied by use case specific weightings. So they have autonomous endpoint management, security centric endpoint management, and I think one other. And that gives you a score, right? What matters though is taking these critical capabilities and applying your own weights in your environment. So I'll say something really controversial. If Chrome OS management is deeply important to you, Ninja scored poorly there. Why? We don't have native capabilities for managing Chrome OS devices. We have some capability around our IT asset management product and pulling those devices in so you can have visibility. But ultimately, what we don't have is a dedicated management capability for Chrome OS. So if Chrome OS is your primary use case, we may be a poor fit today. But if you care about things like automation, Windows patching, Mac patching, and Linux patching and management, those could be weighted very highly in your own evaluation, and we may be a great fit for you. And so, as you use these tools, the Magic Quadrant and critical capabilities, you should lay out which of these critical capabilities matter most to you, apply your own weights, and then look at the different vendors across those weights. And so, yeah, again, you can look at these and you can see that at anything three and up is meeting expectations of the market. Anything three and down means there's work to do there. Again, our MDM capabilities just came out about 12 months ago. And so they're at the lower end. We have a lot of development we want to put in there and a lot of innovation we want to put in there. And we'll see, hopefully, those come up next year. So ultimately, the key takeaway here is take these critical capabilities across all the vendors you're interested in exploring and apply your own weights based on the use cases you have in your environment, ultimately to walk away with a subset of 3 to 5 vendors that you might want to evaluate and get your hands on those products. No one wants to evaluate 20 platforms. Find the 3 to 5 that matter based on your use cases, apply those weightings, and then go and test those out. So I think next we can go into where we perform strongly and why they matter.
Yeah, let me talk about that. But first, I was going to also just mention like one of the things that I really love about working here is our willingness and ability to invest into the engineering capacity of the product itself. And so, where you see things where our MDM product is relatively new with 12 months in, we're making massive investments, for example, on hiring additional skill sets on the engineering team to build our velocity and our muscles so that we can, again, just continue to build on new use cases, solve customer problems, and deliver those and execute at speed and scale. So you'll continue to see this. Like as an example, we delivered, I think it's over 1,000 total features last year in 2025, which is pretty crazy to say out loud. And we're just going to continue doing that again this year across the entire portfolio. So everywhere you see on those critical capabilities is largely getting, reinvested into on our product and engineering teams. Coming back to where we performed pretty well, our strongest ratings showed up in areas that directly reduce, call it day-to-day operational burden. Things like automation and workflow orchestration stand out particularly because they remove those repetitive manual work tasks and they help teams operate more proactively. We also see strong performance across like Windows, Mac OS, Linux patching, which to me is like, the meat and potatoes of really what we do here at Ninja. And so it's really great to see those both represented here and then represented across mixed environments. So representing like the complexities and the heterogeneous nature of our customer environments and know that we can still deliver those capabilities across those operating systems. Also looking at things like extensibility and integration. This is super important. Strong integrations with things like ITSM and security tools means endpoint management doesn't live in isolation. It becomes a part of a much broader workflow that is more efficient for technicians as they go about their day-to-day activities. Ultimately, these strengths map closely to modern IT priorities, things like autonomous operations, faster remediations, improved user experience. And for buyers, this helps validate whether a platform supports how your team actually works, and not just looking at things like a feature list. If we go to the next slide, I think we can close out on the next section. So yeah, to close here, the goal is not to tell, you all which vendor to choose. It is to offer more of a practical way to think about endpoint management decisions and think about as your environments grow more complex. Analyst frameworks like the Magic Quadrant help you understand the market and narrow down the fields. The critical capabilities, those 14 different capabilities Pete walked you through, help you evaluate how platforms perform in real world scenarios and kind of pick and choose what matters most to you based on, how your environment looks. What consistently matters most here is reducing like the manual work through automation, simplifying, operations through consolidation, and ultimately choosing that platform that's going to scale with you and your business. And what we see over and over, is that teams who are most successful with their endpoint strategies focus on less individual features and more fundamentals on how can they ultimately build more automation, more consolidation, more ability to scale without adding in additional complexity overhead, or sometimes I like to call it tax. Another good customer example here is Executech, and how those priorities kind of play out. They're a US IT services firm that manages large distributed environments for mid-market and enterprise customers, focusing on proactive support and scalable endpoint operations. As they grew, they needed to manage tens of thousands of endpoints efficiently without overwhelming their technicians. After migrating roughly 30,000 endpoints to NinjaOne in under 3 months, they improved patch compliance, automated a significant portion of their, routine IT work, enabled a single technician to manage thousands of endpoints every day. And that's just the real world impact of a single customer choosing NinjaOne to reduce their manual work. And these are the types of, realizations that, our thousands of customers are seeing every day. So up until this point, we've talked about, market context, analyst frameworks, kind of a bit of background on NinjaOne and kind of how to evaluate platforms as a whole. At this point, where we step back, we're going to focus on like what really matters for IT leaders and practitioners day to day, and looking at how to build out your modern endpoint management strategy. And the goal here is not to optimize for features or charts, but really to focus more on outcomes. And Pete's going to start off by kind of looking you through what are the main pillars or problems that are facing, modern IT today.
Awesome. I can be kind of verbose here, so I'll try to keep it in line. This is something I talk about on a very regular basis. So Ultimately, modern IT isn't struggling because teams aren't capable. It's struggling because environments have become too complex. The people I work with on a day-to-day basis at customer sites, in large IT orgs and small IT orgs to, one-man band MSPs, are some of the most technically capable, driven people I've ever met, right? So that's not the problem. It's not a talent problem. The problem is we are building complexity into IT operations every single day. And it's very simple, right? I bought one solution to do one thing, and then the next time I have a problem, I buy another solution, and then the next I buy another. That happens over and over again until you have inbuilt complexity that drives inefficiency, limited visibility, you have too many tools, and ultimately you have this technology debt that you need to solve. So let's talk about these three pillars, which really come up the most often and really have the most kind of pernicious impact on your environments. The first is visibility. You can't manage and you can't protect what you can't see. Lack of visibility leaves gaps in operational intelligence, and fragmented data jeopardizes audit readiness. Something like 90% of IT leaders say that they don't have complete visibility into all their devices and workflows in their environment. That's terrifying purely from a security perspective, but it also impacts, your ability to do audits, to do lifecycle planning, to do budgeting. It's a really big impact, and it's substantial across orgs of all sizes and types. This first piece is very much compounded by the second, too many tools. Now, if we think broadly about IT ops, we'll talk about all the tools there. But even if you just think about endpoint management, I can't tell you how many environments I go into where you have, an endpoint management tool that's primarily for end user compute, a totally different one for servers and infrastructure, a completely different one for Mac devices, and then maybe nothing for Linux or yet another tool for your Linux devices. And that's completely ignoring things like virtual machines and networking devices, et cetera. It's incredibly common for us to see 3 to 6 different tools in an environment just for endpoint management. And if you see that, that is added complexity, right? I have to hire specialists for my Mac management tool to deal with the Snowflake Mac devices. I have to have Linux experts for Linux. I may have, Windows end user compute and Windows infrastructure not talking to each other. There is a huge amount of complexity there and cost that comes from that. Then you have the broader picture of IT ops, not just endpoint management. And you're talking about things like different tools for backup, different tools maybe for third party patching, different tools for service desk or ITSM, maybe a completely disjointed and separate IT asset management tool. Every single one of these has a license cost. It has a cost for training and onboarding new technicians. It has a cost to the business of just lack of visibility and control. All of those things add up to a situation where you might have a company like a large healthcare organization I've worked with recently that when we went in, they had 14 different remote access solutions in their environment. Why did they have that? Well, they had acquired some companies, maybe some physician practices in other hospitals. They had the security team that had bought one tool. They had the service desk that had another. They had the end user compute team that had one built into their platform. And no one had sat back and rationalized what that cost was, what that complexity was, what the impact on the devices themselves were. When you have 9, 10 agents running on a device and your employees are complaining about my computer's slow, well, it's probably not that they're not capable and competent. It's probably all the different agents you're running on their machine. And so we see this all the time where there are tons of different uh, applications and platforms being run by IT ops that overlap and intersect and sometimes conflict, but also a ton of different agents that are impacting end user compute. And then finally, here we have legacy systems. When you're running endpoint management on site, when you're running IT ops applications on site, you have the cost of the hardware, you have the complexity of keeping those updated, maintained, and patched, and the risk of you being the people who are patching those systems. You have the challenge of managing a globally distributed workforce if that's what your organization looks like. All of this complexity leads to dramatically less efficiency. And there's a stat directly from Gartner that says that there are organizations that are burdened by legacy tech debt can be as much as 50% less efficient than teams leveraging modern stacks. This complexity directly impacts business outcomes, and really is antithetical to a modern endpoint management practice. And so we'll get into next really what the future of endpoint management looks like when you can get away from this complexity and these challenges.
Yeah, so the modern endpoint management, pillars really comes down to three different things. The first is looking at modern platform capabilities. And that starts with being cloud native. And cloud native can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but for the way that you should interpret this, think scalable and fast. Scalable in the sense that regardless of how many devices or how many users your business is going to grow to, that product that you've chosen or that platform that you're choosing is going to be able to support you at any size and scale. And then fast means how quickly can new updates, can bug fixes, can features get rolled out in the environment. And being cloud native enables that to be done at very, very fast speeds. The next one is looking at cross OS management. Pete called me out earlier. I am a Snowflake Mac user. He is a hardened Windows guy. But thankfully, we both are managed via NinjaOne because our own IT team uses us. And so it's not going to cause them a burden when we choose different devices for our day-to-day drivers and doing work. And then finally, think about like integrations and our integrations kind of built with first principles in mind so that, your workflows can be seamlessly integrated with the other tools that your organization is using. Second is looking at automation and efficiency. Like modern platforms replace these like repetitive manual work items that, technicians are just used to doing over time. Human resources are only becoming more and more scarce, and the ones that you have are not going to want to spend their time doing the same thing over and over again every day. They're going to get disgruntled, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to leave. Having an automated and efficient system or platform as part of your overall modern endpoint management approach is how you keep those people engaged, active, learning, and pushing the bounds of what you can do. And third is looking at the unification of IT operations. Endpoint management is not in a silo. It comes part of a much broader, IT ops workflow, delivering things like centralized visibility across all of those different device types, predictable outcomes, and really true enterprise scale. So bringing all these three pillars together, this is what separates modern platforms and ultimately modern endpoint management. And then I think in the final slide, Pete's going to walk through some of what we've observed as the big benefits or what customers are really getting out of when they adopt these types of solutions.
Yeah, my team owns a function called business value engineering, and the whole purpose of that is to help our customers, understand and realize the benefits of moving to NinjaOne. And in the conversations we have with customers to uncover and understand value that we're delivering, some that we weren't even aware of when we built the product, but that customers have realized through their own, you know, uh, ingenious use cases with Ninja. We see four pillars over and over again, and there's a lot more here, but these come up pretty much with every customer we talk to. The first is reduce cost through consolidation, right? Customers often reduce tool sprawl and lower spend by replacing multiple legacy tool with NinjaOne's unified platform. A really good example of this is the city of Kansas City. They consolidated 8 to 10 tools into one and saved over $200,000 annually while streamlining compliance across thousands of endpoints. Other orgs report eliminating 10 to 15 different tools, particularly when you have a sort of more mature adoption of the NinjaOne platform, cutting licensing costs and support costs significantly. A lot of times this conversation does not include the efficiency benefits of NinjaOne. This is sort of just pure license reduction, FTE reduction if needed, or FTE shifting more often from sort of IT ops to other functions within NinjaOne, within an organization. The second is scaling as you grow without infrastructure drag, right? Modern SaaS architecture allows rapid scaling without ballooning headcount or hardware. One of our customers, Patra, migrated 6,000 endpoints in 30 days, eliminating over 100 hours of manual work and avoiding the need to hire additional techs. They'd originally planned to hire a bunch of additional technicians. They were able to shift most of that cost to upskilling their existing technician base, hiring people in different areas of IT, and ultimately refocusing on more strategic initiatives rather than throwing bodies at a problem that should and could be automated. Ultimately, they ended up with a much larger install base than they had intended because they've grown so fast, and being able to manage all of those on a globally distributed network with minimal overhead and headcount. The third here is reducing risk with consistent security. Ultimately, IT operations has taken on a major burden of cyber hygiene, right? 80% of IT ops professionals say they have direct security responsibilities because so much of the fundamentals of security rest with IT ops. It's things like patching, it's things like endpoint hardening, it's things like backup and recovery, it's things like initial triage of EDR alerts, things like that. All of those are coming to IT ops, and so you need a system that can enable that. Organizations like Deluxe and North Sydney Council achieved 100% endpoint compliance by dramatically improving the reliability of patching through automation. This was previously a manual process. This increases resilience against threats and helps meet regulatory standards faster and with less effort. In particular, with our FedRAMP environment, for example, we can help MSPs and small IT organizations on their CMMC journey, for example. And so being able to leverage our platform and the tools that we provide to be compliant themselves and or help clients be compliant if you're an MSP is a really critical value that we deliver with the NinjaOne platform. And then finally, increased agility and uptime. Automation and simplified management boost operational agility. Many teams report really significant time savings through being more efficient. There's automation, and then there's pure efficiency. If you have fewer clicks, if you have more information, if you have better tools in your hands, if you require less training to do what you do, you can be more efficient. So ultimately, you're ending up with cost reduction, greater ability to scale with the business, reduce risk, and ultimately better business outcomes that truly impact business agility and productivity. So I think we can stop there and jump into questions. I do see a bunch of questions in Q&A right now. If you have additional questions, please do drop them in. We'd love to answer them. We've got about 10 minutes that we can answer questions. So let's jump in. I would love to answer one here. Are there plans to bring DEX features into Ninja? I'm personally very passionate about this. I believe, and I think Ninja believes that, an endpoint management platform and a broader IT operations platform has the ability to really impact the digital employee experience. So for those of you who don't know what DEX is, it is taking a more employee-focused approach to IT operations, right? So how do we improve their productivity, their satisfaction, reduce technology friction? And if you look at the underpinnings of a platform like NinjaOne, a lot of the data and tools that you need are really there. They're just not presented in a DEX-centric way. And so I feel very passionately, and we've had a lot of conversations internally about bringing DEX capabilities, at least operational DEX capabilities to the NinjaOne platform. And so it's absolutely on our vision board for where the NinjaOne platform is going. Matt, anything you'd add to that?
No, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. Just think about, what we talked about through a modern endpoint management strategy. Decks and operational decks are absolutely a part of that because that's really about proactively identifying and solving problems before the end user submits a ticket. And so kind of shifting further into like further left or further right, depending on which way you're facing, but further away from the user having to do anything to fix a problem is absolutely something that we're focused on, here in the near future.
Awesome. There was a FedRAMP question that came up earlier that I think we can talk maybe briefly. I don't know how much detail we can provide, but the customer asked, our FedRAMP environment, which is both for U.S. federal organizations that need FedRAMP compliance, but also can be used for, standard commercial customers or MSPs who need CMMC compliance. That environment is slightly different than our commercial environment. Matt, at a high level, what are the differences there?
Yeah, there are two primary variables that drive the differences in that environment. One is just out of necessity of some of the regulation around that environment, it's on a earlier version than our commercial version. So if you see, again, our 12 dot versions, we're starting to roll out now through various instances. Right now in federal, we're running a version of 8. So it's several versions behind. So you're not going to be getting those latest features. However, we do have a plan of moving the federal version into 11, which again was the last version we have out, and then ultimately bringing that to parity. We're just not quite there yet. So some of the disparity you see between the two is just a version mismatch between them. And then finally, there's just certain feature limitations that just cannot exist in FedRAMP. But I'll give you one example. Federal guidelines restrict sending SMS messages for MFA or for other, or just in general. So we have to disable that whole feature. And, unless federal guidelines change, SMS message sending, it will not be available in FedRAMP. If there's specific things that you're, inquiring about or have questions about, I'd urge you to either submit a ticket or talk to your account manager. But one of the things we are focused on is just narrowing the gap in 2026 between, when the commercial instance gets an update and when the federal version will also get an update.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. There's a question here that I think I would love to answer, and it's from Matt Glower. Would it be possible to add more granular policy controls similar to the security settings and config policies in Intune? There's a today answer and a soon answer here, I think, that we can talk through, Matt, if you want to hop in.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really a testament to one of our big features that we have coming out this year, which is what we're calling dynamic policies, which is a way for technicians to target, device policy configurations based on individual or specific device attributes that give you much more granular targeting of policy configurations into those devices. It's something we've been working on for almost a year now, and it's just rolling out into beta. So I expect to see that, later here in 2026.
The other thing I would add to that, Matt, is if you have Mac devices, our new Mac OS MDM capability, which came out mid last year, does have built-in config management via MDM policies. And we are looking at how to bring that to Windows as well, which I think will ultimately result in what you're looking for, is the ability to configure and harden Windows devices through a GUI rather than through things like scripts. Next. Do you have people who can walk it through our environment and help us organize things or show us better ways to do things or line up with your best practices? I'll take this one if you don't mind, Matt. One thing that I'm really proud of that NinjaOne does is offer unlimited onboarding training and support. The people who do that are called sales engineers. You can ignore the title. They are deeply technical engineers who can help you in your environment, and every single customer has access to them. So if you reach out to your account manager and ask them for a technical engagement with a sales engineer, they can walk through your environment, provide some input and feedback. They also have some resources, like we have best practices around policy management and a few others that they can provide as resources as well for you to sort of self-service. I also do want to call out the NinjaOne Academy. Every one of our customers gets the NinjaOne certification course for both technicians and admins for free as part of your account. And I would encourage you to go through that because that does walk through the how, but also sort of the best practices as well. Next question, Matt. As part of your ITAM product, which is brand new and just came out, are you planning to introduce software asset management functionality?
Yes. Yes, we are. It's on the short list of things that we're looking to add on there. So I don't know if I can give you an exact date as of now, but it is absolutely something that we're looking to build.
Awesome. Next one, also a little bit of a T-ball for us. Does NinjaOne integrate with Intune?
Yes, it does. In fact, it does, and it's continuing to improve. So it's one of the integrations where on each subsequent release, we expect to add in additional capabilities and additional features. For an example, I believe in this latest version coming out, introduces the ability to bring in mapped users from their devices from Intune. So again, like if a user device association exists in Intune, you'll be able to recreate that in Ninja. I know that's been a very common and popular request from our customers.
Awesome. I'm gonna answer one really quick here. Will there be Android management capabilities? Mark, we already have those built in. They're part of our MDM product. So you can deploy MDM-based management to Android devices today. Next question is about role-based access control. I saw a couple different questions here, but the key question that's being asked by Clayton is, can I restrict an admin to certain endpoints? And so we do have very robust role-based access controls. They can be done at an org, location, device type level. I think the right approach here, Clayton, rather than assigning them, you can assign individual devices, but I believe, but I think the better approach here is to assign device types or device roles to those devices and then give the admin access only to those device roles. You can get really granular here on, basically every workflow in Ninja. So I would dig into role-based access controls. And again, a call out to those sales engineers. You can set up a technical engagement to walk through that. We are over time. I think we can take 2 or 3 more questions though if people want to stay. There's a general question around integrations with, AV and security products here. There's a question about Blackpoint. There's a question about just deepening our integrations with security partners. Any thoughts there, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple of thoughts here. One is just integrations in general and then specific to AV. We talked about the importance of integrations during the webinar. And one of the things we're focused on this year is how do we build more integrations at a faster clip? Because I'll use security tools as one example. There's a lot out there. And, today we have, I think, 3 to 4 security integrations, but there's probably another 20 we could go out and build if we really wanted to. And so the question is, how do we help unlock those 20 to be built either in parallel or in quick succession to each other, so that we can like support as much of the population of these products as we possibly can versus having to pick and choose like we've done historically. Um, that's again like a big focus for us this year in terms of like how to build out the integration muscle that we have so we can rapidly iterate and develop and then ultimately publish these things for your benefit.
Awesome. I think we'll take one last question here. And I think we can say maybe this question right here. Reporting. It can always be better. It's a critical feature. We have plans to make it better. Matt, what are the plans this year?
This is so maybe to give you a little bit of a look behind the curtains. One thing that we track internally is what we call our top priority or P1 list, which is, the absolute like top product priorities, engineering priorities, product marketing, Pete's team priorities that we absolutely need to hit. One of those is dynamic policy. The other one is building a flexible and customizable reporting engine for our customers. And so in terms of resources, visibility, and just general like um, time spent, this is one of the top areas of focus for us. So you're probably already seeing some of that coming out. So you see, being able to develop reports from the device table and kind of put that into a report. That's just kind of the starting point. And what we're going to see over time is the ability to create these data sets from other products or features within the product, and then create customizable widgets on top of those. And that's something that we're kind of actively developing as we speak.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Matt, thanks so much for all the time spent with us today and answering all these great questions. Everyone who joined us, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found it valuable. Again, the link to the Magic Quadrant is in the resources if you want to grab it before you wrap up. But with that, we'll say thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.